I think when you're talking about the next 3 to 5 years, it's not only about positioning. The issue is we just don't have a strategy.
So what I would do in a nutshell is appoint 6 PRs in core markets, get them started next week. Then go on social media blitz with a single message.
I'm saying I agree with what he's saying. He's spot on. So they haven't changed with time, right? They still believe in this. This is the way forward, and it's sadly not the way forward.
Preparing for the rebound, strategizing for the long term. On the Rocketship Experience today, we are discussing tourism, and in the studio today with me are Hiran Cooray, who is the chairman of Jetwing Symphony, Malik Fernando, who is managing director at Resplendent, Ceylon, and Vickum Nawagamuwage, who is founder and CEO of Santani Wellness Resorts and Spa. Gentlemen, welcome. So we're going to start the conversation today discussing how Sri Lanka should position, right? This can be a long, expansive conversation if you look at how to position the market, but we've also a market coming out of several crises. The recent most one kind of self-inflicted, a sovereign debt crisis and all the negative news that it has generated. So I'll start with you, Malik. When we look at positioning, there's that bigger picture. Should the current crisis also matter in how we position for the short term Sri Lanka?
See, you can't really position for the short term. Positioning is, you build it up over several years. The fact is, we've not even started. Secondly, most people don't understand or appreciate what positioning is. So I'm sure as the conversation evolves, we'll talk about it. What does positioning mean? Our issue here is that if you look at the country as a whole, it's like the adage I use is Rip Van Winkle, right? He went to sleep when the conflict was raging and he woke up after the conflict ended and he carried on doing exactly what he was doing before. So our whole positioning marketing model is a pre-internet model. We have no digital outreach, we don't reach consumers, and we do not, when I say we, I'm saying industry as a whole, there's a lack of appreciation of how you position and what modern tourism marketing looks like. So if you look at competing destinations, successful destinations, and many of us on chat says, why can't we be like the Maldives? Why can't we be like Thailand? Why can't we be like, ABCD? But you look at everything those countries do, we do nothing of those. So you have a situation where there's a huge deal of ignorance about what it takes to position. We all appreciate that there's a huge amount of potential, but how do we tap that potential and how do we position the country in the minds of the traveler as an aspirational destination? Because a travel decision is made up, Shamindra, based on two things: knowledge of the destination and your own confidence about your own financial situation. So on the situation that faces consumers, although they are under tremendous price pressure, they still want to travel. There was a recent Expedia report that said that 50% of travelers are expecting to spend more for their 23 holidays, and that 23 will be the best year ever for tourism. 22 has been a phenomenal year globally, but not in Sri Lanka for reasons which I'm sure I don't want to go on too long, that we will talk about in the next few minutes.
So same question to you, Vickum. So Malik lays out the fact that positioning is an aspirational thing that you set up for aspiration, but he also finds out that, hey, digital is potentially where we need to have a large outreach on. But tackle positioning for us, how?
Couple of things I agree with Malik, and positioning is not something short term. But we have a short-term situation, so we need to address that as well. But that's not positioning. That's more tactical, where we need to survive this season. Otherwise, most of us will be out of the industry. But positioning is you can't have one today and another one tomorrow, because if people get an idea, okay, this is what Sri Lanka, that's what's going to remain in the mind. And that's what's happening right now. What remains in consumers' mind is the burning buses and all of that happened 3-4 months ago. But coming back to positioning, and to add to what Malik said, it's not only the digital part that's kind of preceded the previous veterans of the industry, but what we have kind of no understanding is how the competitive landscape around us has changed. Right? Before 83, essentially Sri Lanka and Thailand were the leading destinations in whole of Asia. But by the time we started back in 2009, there's Bali, there's Maldives, there's Langkavis, all around us there's a lot of competition. So we never thought of how and what they are offering. And we kept doing the same beach thing. Like, I mean, the first things, our government-sponsored developments that came after the end of the war was Kalpitiya, Kuchaveli and Pasikuda.
Did as well.
Yeah. Deddu didn't even take off, right? And this is what they did in the 70s in Nigambo, Bentota, Beruel, Ekadu, right? So they did the same thing that they did 30, 40 years ago and expected different results. That just doesn't work, right? So, I mean, I'll give you a very interesting example. Like, we all know Pasikuda, right? Because first time I went to Pasikuda, I was about 40. But I knew Pasikuda because my father used to say like how good it was, how they used to walk like a mile into the sea. And we all had this amazing nostalgic idea of Pasikuda as great. I'll ask another question if any of you know a place called Veerapitia. Any idea what Veerapitia is? Right?
Where is that?
Exactly. Now, Veerapitia is one of Time Magazine's 100 greatest places.
That's where you are.
That's where Santani is. Right? Now, the point is now from a consumer's point of view. So we had our own idea and we went and invested a lot of money in Pasikuda, right? In thinking, okay, that's what the consumer wants. But if you ask a consumer, some person in London or Paris or Dubai or New Delhi, Pasikuda or Veerapitia doesn't mean anything to them. There's no competitive advantage between Veerapitia versus Pasikuda for a consumer's point of view, right? So we, at least us, we understood that and we didn't care about all these ideas of like, this is where it needs to be, this is how the round trip should work. We created something what the consumer wants. So that, I think, we lacked. So whatever we do from a positioning point of view, we need to really understand how consumers are thinking of us or competition, our other competitors, and try to do something different so that we can stand out.
Sure. Hiran, so you own and manage a lot of rooms under the larger Jetwing brand. You know, there's Symphony and there's the older Jetwing hotels. How many rooms do you own?
About 1,600 now.
Right.
You know.
So does that change the way you approach this issue? You know, how about Sri Lanka?
Not really, because listening to both Malik and Vickum, I do agree with them, and I think what we need to show the world is the best we have, and that has to be from genuine. You know, our positioning. You are asking the question, positioning. You know, Malik is positioned, Vickum is positioned, Avindra, your position, right? So similarly, it's who we are. What we are, we offer the world. The best we offer. You know, when we are showcasing, we showcase the best. You see, in a genuine, natural way, you know, we have the beaches, we have the mountains, we have the Veerapitias and the Pasikudas. Whatever we have, the best we select, and that should be our positioning, right? And then once we position that, we showcase the best. That doesn't mean to say only that best is going to come. Others will follow. But we are positioned because Sri Lanka is blessed with a 5-star island, right? We have almost everything other than snow in this country, right? So we have to be, genuinely position that, promote that. And, we have top quality hotels. We must have confidence to showcase that to the world. The top quality hotels, the service, our food today is excellent, but we are not confident to offer that to the foreigners who come. We still want to offer something which is outside. We want to offer, Alaskan salmon or Argentinian steak when we have such lovely Sri Lankan grown food. So if we position that, then people will come different parts of the world. I mean, we want to go to France to drink the French wine or go somewhere else to eat something else, right? Similarly, we have to position the best we have so that, and who we are, right?
And survey after survey, if you ask, I think travelers who come here, they're surprised about the friendliness of the destination.
The people.
Right? However, is that enough in terms of grabbing that
See,
aspirational
if
market?
I can just add in, going back, we've spoken about positioning. Irrespective of how well or how mediocrely we position, and irrespective of what we position, you can't position if you don't communicate. So let's say you have all these ideas. If you don't open your mouth, right, it's a non-starter. So fundamentally, the problem we have here is we are unable to communicate because we are not
Communicate confidently.
communicate confidently, but even
No, I think
in
it's
any
the right
manner,
channels as well.
Yeah.
we
Using the
don't
right channels.
we don't communicate with consumers at all. Communicate with consumers means you have PR, you get the message out through media, you get the message out through social media, you get the message out through search engine, through AdWords. We have no consumer communication campaign since 2007. The last global promotional campaign was 2007. And Hiran, you will recall on some of our chats that the fact that there was a global promotional campaign finalized 6 months ago after 2 years of hard work, the trade was euphoric. But then with the changes, it went belly up. So that's history. But the point is, since 2007, this country has not been positioned. It has not been communicated. So it's up to the individual properties within our limited abilities to talk about what we do. But that is not how countries market. So imagine the millions of people who don't have that ability to communicate, who are just waiting for guests, and they're not getting them because no one knows what's going on in Sri Lanka.
So the fundamental issue of positioning remains, but even more basic is the fact that we need a campaign of some sort, right? What is holding it back, and potentially is there an opportunity to quickly do something?
Okay, if I can just add on. The only thing holding it back is many in the industry consider it not important or don't understand significant elements of the campaign, which is about consumer outreach. There is still a propensity, as I said at the beginning, for trade outreach, because that is what many have been doing for decades. Now, if you reach out to the trade, you talk to your trade partners every day. You Zoom them, you Teams them, you WhatsApp them, they know exactly what's going on. They want to support us. They have a love for this country. But if their phone doesn't ring, if they don't get an email from their consumer, because I've just come back from traveling, asking for Sri Lanka. I've just come back from traveling in 4 or 5 European countries, and all of them say, we love this country. You don't need to tell us about it, but our consumers are shit scared, pardon my English, because they think that if they come here, there are fuel shortages. They think that they're depriving Sri Lankans of food. They think there are protests, riots, etc. The fact that we are back to normal, on the face of it, since July, we have not communicated to one consumer anywhere in the world. We've done our own thing with media articles.
Malik on that. I do agree with you, Malik. That's spot on. I mean, if we don't, that's the most important thing to be done today, is to have this communication campaign to the consumer, because as you rightly say, the operators they are convinced.
They love us.
They love the country, correct. They love the people, love the country. They will sell. And for them, it's a business anyway. But the consumer must be convinced to come here.
I mean, that's it. It's again like a time difference that we are living in the pre-internet era, like 83 when we stopped. That's when the internet started as well. So the amount of information a consumer gets in 83, where this trade model was the best model we had, versus when we started with the internet like at its peak and like information available to you so many means. And we didn't do that switch, right? So now consumer has more information. And look, I mean, from a travel agent's point of view, if someone comes and say, okay, I want to go to Asia, I think I will go to Thailand, they are not going to jump the gun and say, no, go to Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
They just want to get the thing.
package. Yeah, sure.
Whatever they ask. So we need to get the consumer to ask that I need to go to Sri Lanka. That's it.
See, the critical thing is there is a bursting desire amongst consumers to come here. The last winter season was the best ever, right? I think for many of us,
for us,
it was phenomenally good. There are many who tell me it was full, but they didn't make money because our rates are shockingly low, way too low. Now, all those consumers who had bookings which were cancelled, to convert them is very easy because they love the country, they know about it, they plan their holidays. We've all got tens of millions of dollars of cancelled or delayed bookings. but they need the signal about normalcy. And that isn't coming, and that isn't considered important.
Give us a sense about how the industry is looking now. We've had like 3 years of crises. If you go back from the constitutional crisis, that was late 2018, I think, right? Almost 4 years of crisis.
But that didn't really impact. It was really after Easter.
Easter was when the trouble started. How are we looking in 2022? What is the expectation for 2023? I mean, you got to make a case based on where you are right now, right? And then let's talk about, okay, if you had this or that on top of that, where will we go? How is 2022 looking like right now?
Well, 2022 was very bad. I mean, for most of us, this year was a bad year.
Only preceded by COVID.
Yes. So we had COVID and then the economic and the political crisis here, and the business came to literally zero once again. So we've had 2 years, 2020 and 2022, where business came to literally zero because of the different reasons, COVID, as you said, and then the economic and political crisis over here. So with that, now it is once again slow pickup. And due to what Malik was alluding to earlier, due to the lack of the communication to the consumer, the confidence is not there even for 2023, which, as you said, is going to be a bumper year in global tourism. Are we confident? I'm not sure.
Same here. I mean, its confidence is zero almost. So unless we do something now, guys, it's already too late for 2023 because we get most of our 2023 bookings for January to March or April. And we're already too late for that. So it's honestly, I would say it's dire for the industry right now.
How do you salvage what's left of the winter season? Let's talk. So that is January to about March 2023. Is it possible to salvage? How do you do that?
It's possible to salvage a little bit of it, not fully. I think the most efficient way now will be to invite as many journalists as possible, because unfortunately, because of the foreign exchange crisis, we cannot pay the PR agencies and whom we hire outside, not the companies but the government, do not get the dollars to pay now. So therefore, I can't see complete communication strategy going out into the world in the next 3 months, right? So
PR is a bank for buck.
Let me finish a little bit more. So I think immediately what can be done though is to get the most influential journalists, the influencers, whatever, to the country. Let them see what they see and write what they see. So therefore you blast on social media platforms, various networks, their own newspapers, whatever, and that brings in a lot of credibility. If Malik goes or Vickum goes, I go and tell, look, Sri Lanka is safe, come back, there is everything. Okay, just a handful will believe that, but not many. But their own people, they will believe.
If you ask me, within a week we can start salvaging, right? Let me explain. It's not going to happen because we don't have the bandwidth and the ability to execute. But in an ideal world, what you do is, if you look at consumer outreach, right? Because of the short lead time, we should have started this in June. It's got to be digital, right? Print is 3-4 months. So if you look at, the print media, certainly magazines, they're doing their April issues now. Newspapers, 2-3 months down the track. And a lot of the print media, because of post-COVID and all, they're cutting down their number of pages. It's got to be digital. So if you look at digital, you need PR. Now, Hiran, actually, to clarify, if you look at Meta, right? That is Facebook and Instagram, you pay in rupees. You don't have to pay in dollars. I've been screaming this for the top of my lungs for the last 2-3 months. You don't need dollars to position the destination. I'll repeat that. You don't need dollars. It's very easy for, say, whoever who might be in charge to say we don't have dollars. But the fact is, you find dollars for certain things, like going for trade shows. But if you look at a fraction of that spend, PR is the highest ROI. For $3,000, right, which is 1.5 million rupees in a major destination, you can get 1 month's high-end PR. And PR leads to immediate outreach. Right now, Sri Lanka tourism has a grand total of 0 PRs overseas. Maldives has about 10. We have a grand total of 0 overseas representation officers or companies. So therefore, we are essentially talking and promoting only within this country to a domestic audience. Nothing we do really goes outside our shows. So what I would do in a nutshell is appoint 6 PRs in core markets, get them started next week. Then go on social media blitz with a single message. Now, we've started on the Tourism Alliance, Fall in Love Again. We've reached essentially 15 million impressions. We've reached 900,000 people in the UK on their browsers at home, telling them come back to Sri Lanka and linking to a Love Sri Lanka site. At country level, we don't even have a acceptable website at country level. So it's actually, there's some fundamental things that we need to do, which can be executed in 1 week. The results will obviously take 4 to 5 weeks to come. But there needs to be a will and there needs to be an ability to execute. The monies are there because they've been collected and we can pay in
Rupees
LKR.
are there.
Yeah.
Rupees
But
are there.
largely LKR now. So if you look at social media,
Okay.
you pay in LKR. Now all of us are doing our
That's
campaigns.
possible, then,
Because Raw have the contract for Meta, right? So Insta and Facebook, Google is still in dollars, but it's pay for performance, pay per click, right? So the costs relatively are a few $1,000s a month. So it's a very effective, but that goes back to my point of not appreciating, understanding what digital marketing is, how Singapore, Dubai, New Zealand, Australia, USA, how do they promote the destination?
So you can salvage the season with like $100,000, which is really in the grand scheme of things.
It's too late because a lot of people have
Not
made their
even
decisions.
that. I don't think you need to even spend $200,000. I mean, getting few journalists, Sri Lankan Airlines will sponsor it. We will sponsor their stay. All we need is collectively send an invitation. And again, it's digital. We are not waiting for next month's publication. Like they come, they go back, they write an article on Wall Street Journal or whatever it is.
For most hotels, yes, I agree. The only, right now what's happening is there are Russian tourists coming in with charters and all sorts of things. And of course, at a very, very embarrassingly low rate. But they are filling some of the southern beach hotels. All right. So that will give some kind of some revenue for them to just survive the winter. Right. That's the only large scale arrivals that is happening. Indian market is also beginning to rev up a bit. We see some traction over there. As a company, we are fairly strongly positioned in India, and we see that growing. And there is that sympathetic feel as well within India. That we need to support them. That kind of thing is there. So the travel agents make a little bit of an extra effort, and they also know that they'll get a lot more for their Indian rupee over here now than before. So all that put together, we see some growth coming in from the Indian region. So overall, I mean, yes, I agree that most will be on a low.
So we've spent some time discussing how we can address the current crisis, right? I'll urge you now to sort of step back a bit. How do you create building from there onwards? And this is a conversation that's relevant for the next 1, 2, 3 years and not necessarily for the next 4 months. How do we begin to position Sri Lanka as, it's the top destination you want to go to? That's that lost paradise that we need to discover.
I think when you're talking about the next 3 to 5 years, it's not only about positioning. The issue is we just don't have a strategy.
Right.
Sri Lanka doesn't have a strategy. Sri Lanka tourism doesn't have a strategy. And I blame the industry, very frankly, because politicians, the minister comes and goes. They know their time is limited. So it's a function of the system we have as well, because with the minister, people change as well. So you can't execute something on a long-term basis. But even without that, the advice that we have had over the last 10 years, if you take since the end of the war, is where we are today. I mean, let's forget about all the bombings, right? And the period after the bombings. Even at 2019, before the bombings, most hotels were not making money, right? And that was 10 years down the line. We had only one significant foreign direct investment that has come to Sri Lanka, which is Shangri-La, right?
And they're crying about their investment.
So what are we talking? What have we done? Where when you look at places like, if you look at Saudi Arabia, no one thinks of going to Saudi Arabia now, right? They're spending billions of money, and they have kind of bought in all the consultants in the world, like the McKinseys, BCGs of the world, to create a strategy. And they want to attract 130 million tourists by 2030, which we are talking about 7 years. Right? So, whereas we are saying we are looking at Langkawi and we are happy with these 2 million tourists, and essentially staying in the status quo without really doing much. And we think we have done a good job, which is not.
I agree with Vickum. It's like that boiling frog syndrome. We won't know till it's too late. And when you say 3 to 5 years, I'm not trying to be alarmist, but whether 3 to 5 years that's too long a horizon, because the industry may not be in a proper shape back then because of what's happening. Look at the interest rates people are paying. Look at the borrowings people have accumulated. Look at the low yields. So I think fundamentally it's again the conflict. We came out of the conflict, and we have the industry, unlike so many other destinations. If you look at Saudi, look at the brands that have opened up, look at the consultancies who are advising, look at every other destination. There's a significant FDI element. There are foreign brands. In this country, very few foreign brands. Those who have come are crying because they're not getting the yields. No new brands will come because the industry is not the slightest bit rewarding, because they all have a hurdle rate, right? They have a hurdle rate in terms of internal rates of return. With the low yields we have, and the relatively low occupancies, and the lack of positioning, it impacts FDI. So if any government thinks they can get FDI in tourism, they're kidding themselves, because FDI goes in where there are returns to be had, because these are hard-nosed investors. So the issue here, I believe, is that if you look at industry engagement, it's all very parochial. A lot of it is very old-fashioned. There's no fresh thinking. The few foreign brands that are here aren't really engaged in the dialogue. They're kind of bystanders. There is a sense of leave it to us, we'll handle it. You guys are foreign brands, corporates, you do what you do. But honestly, if you don't bring fresh blood in, fresh thinking in, and get all the brands, the few that are here involved, because they do have marketing professionals, they have foreign, people who can give us insights and help us improve our product. Look at Maldives. If the Maldives Tourism Board falls today, the country will prosper because it's being promoted by 100, 200 foreign brands, right?
So this is one of the key things about positioning as well. We don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money on our own. So if we don't have that, what we need to encourage is the FDIs and the brands to come. And when there's a Four Seasons in Sri Lanka, that gives a lot of confidence naturally. And they will spend for it.
Yeah.
What we need to do is to facilitate that. And to facilitate that, you need to give them returns. No one is going to come if there's no returns. So there's another discussion on that. We can touch on that, why there is no returns.
Hiran, these two gentlemen sit in different companies to yours. They don't even share the same forums that the industry sits on.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Well, partly yes, partly no. I do agree that we need the foreign brands. That's for sure. There is no discussion on that. Sri Lanka needs. But the thing is, other than Shangri-La, nobody else brings their own money here. Right? They will bring the brand and their distribution skills, for sure. Four Seasons, the Hiltons, Marriott's, everybody. They have fabulous, Intercontinental, all of them. They have their fabulous networks, distribution networks. So for that reason, yes. But the money, either they need to bring their own investors, or Sri Lankans have to invest in those properties. Think about it. They are asset-light guys.
Now look at Rwanda, right? What does Rwanda, how do you connect Rwanda? With the genocide. What is Rwanda's modern tourism product? The most aspirational product in Africa. Gorillas, one and only, Belmond, Singita. These are brands we can only dream of in Sri Lanka, because the moment your tourism product is healthy, if you get some of these top brands in the country, right? We don't even start looking at their hurdle rates here. So Rwanda is a case in point. It came out of a genocide, but it had strong leadership. It had a clear strategy. They sponsored Arsenal. They set up a very focused airline, and they invited these brands in. So the moment you are positioned, right, to those who feel, look, my product can't be positioned, it raises the bar from an Airbnb that goes from $6 to $30. A 2-star goes from $40 to $60, right? Ditto. So it's not this positioning, as I started out saying, Shaminda, people don't understand what positioning is. Positioning doesn't mean you're positioning as a luxury destination. It means positioning it, just as Hiran said, as a continent's worth of attractions in a small island, right? And without that happening, every segment from high-end to Airbnb is going to bleed.
Is there resistance to this sort of thinking in the wider industry, Hiran? Why it doesn't look like it's a very costly thing to do. It's just a strategy.
Well, the strategy has, well, I think they have explained it fairly clearly that some of the members in the industry also haven't changed with time, right? That is one, I think. I'm trying to put it more diplomatically. Malik is a little bit more blunt.
There are 3 million people at stake, Hiran. We can't beat about the bush.
But sometimes the way you say it, people misunderstand. So, but
I think, Hiran, we have gone through that
but you need
for
to get
so
it
long.
done, no, Vickum.
We have to get it done. We have to call a
Done,
spade
right?
a spade.
So you need you call a spade, and the spade will come and cut your neck.
Yeah.
Right?
We have to have an aragalia within the industry to call it as it is.
Our objective is what? To get position the country, various things. So you insult these guys who have carried this tourism along over the years.
No, it's not insult. What we're saying is there needs to be fresh thinking, Hiran.
So therefore, we need to get it going. So what I'm saying, I agree with what he's saying. He's spot on. So they haven't changed with time, right? They still believe in this. This is the way forward, and it's sadly not the way forward. Right now, even in our own company, I hardly get involved in marketing. It's the youngsters who
Your
are
kids.
below third. Yeah, my son, and of course there are others as well in the marketing team who do most of the thinking and action, because I'm now a little dated, right? So therefore, it's them who will drive it forward. So that's an issue. The other is, we also discussed, Vickum, you mentioned, the politicians come and go. They look at it, now I will resurrect tourism and then I'll go, right? And that's a very short term, very, give a moratorium, give this, bring some tourists here, do some action. But that again is hurting us in the long term. So that's important in the short term. Okay, if you're dying, you have to be given oxygen, and you have to given all the necessary things to keep alive. So that's necessary. But then also you need to cut down on your consumption, various things, to become fit again. So that's where we are lacking.
So Hiran, I'm asking you this because you represent the industry often in forums, right?
Yeah.
Not because you agreed to come here. I mean, we appreciate the fact that you're here. Why cannot the industry sit down every time there's a change and say, fine, there's a change, but we don't want the strategy to be touched because we've done work on this.
Okay, that's a brilliant question you're asking, right? Now, tourism is a very fragmented industry.
Right.
Right? Tourism is, we see tourism as, people coming in. But don't forget, hospitality is fragmented, tourism is fragmented, right? Now, when it's fragmented, it's very difficult to get everybody to think alike.
Sure.
Right? That's where the strategy that Vickum is talking of has to be decided by 1 or 2 people.
One of the reasons why we are fragmented is also because there's no strategy.
Globally, Vickum, tourism is fragmented.
Globally, in general, when you have a goal, right, then people identify, because there's no goal. People are going this way, this way.
Yeah.
At most, the industry needs to get together and sort of isolate couple of $100,000 over a year to get a decent enough campaign out there.
It's not the money. It's not
No,
the money.
it's not the money.
It's
It's not the money.
It's the aligning of thought.
Yeah. And also the aligning of thought will not happen.
Yeah.
Right? I bet my life on it, it will not happen.
Won't happen.
So therefore, either the minister or the president or the chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion, 1 or 2 people have to take the call.
See, the way it should happen, the only way I see this moving forward is, as a government agency, you can't seek advice from the industry in the way the industry is currently structured. Right? Because for the reasons we've explained. The only way you can do it is you set up a professional marketing cell who knows best practice globally, who has access to funding, who just get on with it. The moment you seek advice, right, or advice is given to you, if I'm an official, I'm thoroughly confused. I can use the mixed advice I'm giving to do nothing. So unless you set up a cell, and this is how the way the donors work. The donors work looking for organizations that have a clear vision, have efficient delivery, can execute, and they provide the funding, and that group gets on with it without talking to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. The moment you do it by consulting, and you're consulting, then you arrive at something which is the lowest common denominator. That gets you nowhere. So, in my view, the only way we can get out of this mess and reposition before it's too late, and even do tactical as to the current situation, is there has to be a cell which is empowered, which is staffed with professionals who understands, and this was attempted with the So Sri Lanka campaign back ago, and then just gets on with it, knowing what are the best practices, and the industry will reap the benefits in a fairly short period of time.
As we close up the conversation, and again, I'm trying to shift to a longer term challenge here. You all discussed about Sri Lanka's unattractiveness as for tourism investment. The private equity guys, the family officers from overseas are not putting money into infrastructure to attract the big brands. How do you break it? And you can't break this now. This is the wrong time to deal with it. But besides positioning and a strategy, what are those conditions that are required?
Can I just butt in with a classic example? When they were doing Pasikuda, I went to government, I said, don't give Pasikuda, it's a beautiful bay. Don't give it to 15 mid-level tourism operators, right? They'll botch it up because you need to create a destination. Give the land free to Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, or some such brand. Break it up into two 20-30 acre resorts. Let them bring investors from Singapore, India, Dubai, whatever. Create flight links. You create the destination. So all the tourist board needs to do is provide the land, right? Step back and let the brands do the marketing. So unless you have a targeted strategy where you go after certain investors, now there's so much red tape. There is also amongst the industry a huge suspicion. The industry, on average, doesn't like foreign brands. That is again because the way we approach it, right? And there have been so many attempts to even lobby that non-Sri Lankans should not carry on hospitality businesses in Sri Lanka. I'm telling you, that's how bad it has been. That may have been wishful thinking, but you have to cut through that mindset. So to answer your question, positioning is going to take 5 years if you ever get started. In the interim, the way you do it is you find some beautiful spots, you go to specific investors and you tell them, you come in, you organize the airlift, you position the...
So
how
I
do
think
we address ROI?
You mentioned one thing about mindset. That's where it all starts in Sri Lanka and ends in Sri Lanka because we just don't have the right mindset. We still live inside the well. I mean, again, the example of Pasikuda versus Verapiti is a classic example. They don't think how a consumer is looking at. But we can even do something real short term. But like, so there's, I mean, the country, look at the country, not just the tourism industry, right? We are in a distress situation. We need money immediately as a country, right? Otherwise, we were talking earlier, 3 months down the line, we might have these shortages again, right? So now they're trying to sell Sri Lankan Airlines, they're trying to sell Hilton's, the telecoms, whatever, right? And I was actually speaking with the high official involved in these things, and I said, there may be a potential investor, but they are not coming here for like 10, 20 million investment because it's not worth it. They need to come, if they're coming, they need to come with 200 million and they want to buy all. And the response I got was, no, we can't do that because that kills competition. Who talks of competition in a distress situation? And they are trying to do valuations, business valuations. You don't do that in distress situation. We need money today, right? And we need to identify is like, okay, if the investor can add value in the long term, do they have a brand name? Do they have the ability to invest in the country in the long term? And that's what we need to do and give them free. Right? At least we cut the losses. I mean, Sri Lankan Airlines cost us $150 million a year. You save that by giving it free. Right? By trying to make a buck out of that, we are kind of screwing up with this thing right now.
Hiran, several years ago, you set up Jetwing Symphony, an attempt to bring long-term outside investment into the industry. Can you talk to us about that experience and in terms of ROI, has it been sensible? What's the problem?
Well, I mean, we were successful in bringing some foreign investors in. They are, one of course is a large investor, but he's somewhat resident in Sri Lanka, but though he's not a Sri Lankan national. And then there are a few groups from hospitality groups from New Zealand and so on who came and invested in this. But unfortunately, for the last 3 years, it's not shown any return on investment. And in fact, we right now have to go in for a rights issue to simply retire some of the debt, because at 30% interest, it's killing us. Right, so therefore, thankfully, some of the Sri Lankan investors and those who have invested from overseas are quite supportive of, and they are understanding of the situation. They look at the long term as well. Therefore, they are supporting the rights issue.
Over the long term, how can we fix this ROI issue that Sri Lanka is struggling with?
I think if we manage the debt well, reduce the debt, I think the ROI will work. At least you're looking at a good 12 to 15% return then. At the moment, there are obviously minus returns. But if you, on a healthy investment, if you can get anything over 8%, I think is good, because that's how we
see the fastest way you fix ROI is essentially by having a healthy product. You take your ADRs up. Average daily rate is too low. If you look at many properties, depending on their rate, the break-even can range from 25% to 80%. If your rate is low, then your break-even rate is 80%, right? So fundamentally, you can't do any of the things you're asking unless we have a healthy tourism product, which is related to a healthy, accurate positioning of the wonderful country this is, and to have the travelers coming in. Once that comes in, we've got to also try and eliminate the Sri Lankan primary marketing tactic, the 5 or 6 P's of price, because we are undercutting champions, and we also get hotels get a tremendous amount of pressure because there is a fear in this country of positioning, right? When I started and I said these are my rates because that's what it costs me to deliver that service, people laugh saying you can't get those rates. We've doubled since that time, and we've not reduced even a cent. Even if our occupancy goes to 0, we don't reduce rates because that is very short-term thinking, right? The point here is that the ROIs you're talking about, Hiran's Jetwing Symphony investors, your investors, overseas, whatever, the returns they get will be dependent on the occupancy you get at the rate that you get, which is directly connected for everyone, whether you're at Airbnb, a 3-star or a 5-star, and your cost, because your costs here, electricity costs, fuel costs, building costs, because of our para tariffs and the negative list, are the highest in, I would say, Asia to build a hotel here. So you can't sell cheap. But there is a significant element of the industry who put tremendous pressure on hotels to reduce prices. So perfectly good hotels are selling at 1/3 of what they deserve to sell, because there is this fear that, oh my God, we might be outpriced. Whereas in fact, with such an amazing product, we should be selling at 50% over places than Bali or, in the region, because we offer so much diversity. One final point, sorry, Hiran, and this is what I'm really worried about. People come here for hospitality, for the warmth. We're exporting that. This reminds me of when we privatized the tea estates and the planters went and created what is our biggest competitor, Kenya. The cream of Sri Lankan smiling, hospitality, warmth is being exported. We are actively exporting that. We are exporting that to Saudi Arabia soon, Middle East, Maldives, Ireland, Romania, Canada. Now they're going to countries where they're not going to come back. Earlier, they went to holding countries for 2 years. Now they're going to countries where they go and settle with their family. We are exporting the Sri Lankan warmth. So what are we going to have left? We are going to lose our key USP, or we're giving it on a platter to our competitors. That is the impact of the lack of positioning and marketing in this industry.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So thank you for saying.
So I'll ask each of you to wrap up. Can we start with you, Hiran? Just take a minute if any closing thought.
No, I was going to say, he just said it. We've not discussed up to now the people factor, and that is so important. And people came here even during the worst of the war and all of that because of the people, the hospitality. And if as Malik said, if they are gone, you can have beautiful hotels, all of that. If there is no service, no smile, we are going to struggle.
I think I've already said it up, so over to Vickum.
To me, bottom line is we just need to have a 10-year strategy that doesn't change with governments and people. And if we have to agree on that and execute it for the next 10 years, we need to target about 10 million tourists at different price points. It doesn't mean all high end. And that can give you 40 billion. I have the numbers, $40 billion, which is like more than Sri Lanka can ever think of. It's more than half the GDP.
Can I make a final point? I mean, I speak my mind because there's a lot riding on this for 3 million Sri Lankans. And when you see something, you're going the polar opposite of where you should be going. If you're silent, then you're complicit, right? I'm saying even at this late stage, let the industry, let a few of us, and you know who, those who are listening will know who they are, who have different points of view, who disagree with a lot of what we are saying here around this table. Let us meet, let us put our heads together, and let us, because we're all in this together, and there is a significant human cost, we know what that is, of the fact that the industry continues to underperform. So whereas next year could be phenomenal and will be phenomenal for the rest of the world, we'll still be going around with a begging bowl when it comes to tourists. So it's not too late. My only appeal is let's get together as an industry. Forget the authorities. We've got to unite as an industry and try and come to a common consensus. If we fail, we've tried.
Malik, Vickum, Hiran,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.